everyone, we are back with another ranking Nancy Drew book covers, and you guys have really been enjoying these videos, and I have definitely been enjoying making these as well. So today we are going to be continuing on with covering books 11 through 15. I'm going to show you all of the alternate Nancy Drew covers through the years, and I'm going to let you know what I think about them, what I like, what I don't like, and I'm going to let you guys know which one is my favorite. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with book number 11. This one is called Clue in the Broken Locket. And for this one, we actually have 4 different book covers to review. So starting off with the first one, as always, we have the cover by Russell Tandy. This one definitely kind of reminds me a little bit of like Powerpuff Girls, just looking at Nancy in the blue, we've got George in red, and we have Bess in green. So that was definitely the first thing that crossed my mind when I saw the 3 colors of them. So definitely kind of giving low-key some Powerpuff Girl vibes. And we do see all 3 of the girls in front of like a body of water and what appears to be kind of like a busted up broken ship that has beached on the shore. We can also see a little bit of like maybe a lighthouse in the back and the shoreline on the opposite end. Moving on, we have the next cover. This one is by Bill Gillies. We have a similar scene with all 3 girls kind of huddled around a damaged ship that is on shore or a boat. And again, we see the body of water behind them, a little bit of the shore, and Nancy has her ever-present blow-up doll expression, very shocked, expressive look. Bess and George also do as well. And I do have to say, that is a massive locket. It's almost like a Flavor Flav size little locket. Obviously for illustration purposes, they did want it to be more visible on the cover, but it does seem to be comically large for a heart-shaped locket. So moving on to the next one, we have our first of the 2 Rudy Nappy covers. We actually have 2 this time. So starting off with the first one, once again, similar scene. We've got Nancy, Bess, and George. Once again, they're all in their Powerpuff Girl colors. It would have been too perfect if Bess was in blue and if Nancy was in red, then they really would have matched the Powerpuff Girls. Once again, we have the broken boat and Nancy holding the locket, but this time we actually have a man standing behind Nancy, which is definitely an interesting one, but the background is very interesting to me as well. It has a very like yellow, goldeny, hazy kind of look, almost like they are in a golden hour. The body of water behind them seems to be a little bit smaller, more of like a river, whereas like in the previous 2 covers, it almost looked like it could have been like a bay or a lake or something like that, or possibly even the ocean if you were not familiar with the story. So this one definitely feels a little bit more of like a stream or a river, so definitely a little bit of a smaller type of body of water. And then we also see a little bit of a structure back there, kind of like an old log cabin shack kind of building. And then finally moving on to the last cover, once again this is the second Rudy Nappy cover. This one to me once again has all of the similar elements as the previous 3 covers. However, this one feels a lot more dynamic in the cover because we have the layering of the old kind of creepy looking tree peeking over the corner. We have the boat once again, and we have the girls with like their jeans rolled up, almost like they just kind of went trucking through an old stream, and Bess is holding her shoes as to not mess them up, and they are pulling a locket out of the little boat. But the atmosphere of this one comes across so much more than the previous ones because we have a really dark, gray, dreary kind of scene behind them. We've got reeds or brush almost like hiding the boat like it's been there for a long time. And I just really love the amount of atmosphere in this one. Once again, if you look at the previous 3 covers, they're very bright, they're very light, they're very color saturated, and it almost just looks like a beautiful sunny day, whereas the last one really conveys more of like an abandoned place, a very secluded place, very like dark and creepy and mysterious, which Nappy just does so well. But I do think it's quite interesting to see the 2 Nappy designs side by side, where a lot of the elements are the same. However, the vibe is just so totally different. I feel like in the first Nappy cover, the one that really kind of gives more the intrigue is the presence of the man, but the atmosphere in the final cover in my mind just can't be beat. which is really nicely juxtaposed between the light and bright pastel colors of the three girls. So honestly, this one is another winner for me for Rudy Nappy. It just has the vibes that I think fits the story really well, and I feel like it just conveys so much more of the vibe and the mystery in the single cover than all of the three combined. So I'm going to be giving the winner to Nappy's second cover. So moving on to book number 12, this one is called The Message in the Hollow Oak. We have 3 different covers for this one. Starting off as always, we have the cover from Russell Tandy. And in this one, we see Nancy kind of emerging from the bushes. There is an oak tree in frame, and there are 2 men present. One is kind of situated behind her, still kind of in the brush, and then one is on the ground near the base of the trunk, and he appears to be examining something. Next up, we have the next cover, which is, once again, we have a double feature from Rudy Nappy, and this one is a very similar scene to the first one, just kind of looks a little bit more time appropriate when the story was revived. We see Nancy in more of like pants and a suit jacket rather than like the long skirt that she had in the first one. Once again, we have the man behind her in a red shirt, once again kind of emerging from the woods, and then once again there is a man in the foreground who appears to have just dug up something, and he is examining something in his hand. This one, between the last one, while compositionally they are nearly identical, I think that I really enjoy the way that the tree kind of like canopies around them and just kind of frames them a little bit more. I also really like Nancy's outfit choice a little bit more in this one, so far we've got a really good option here. And then moving on to the third cover, once again another Rudy Nappy cover. This is the one I feel like I am most familiar with. This is what I call like the composite style that Rudy Nappy does in a lot of his cover illustrations. So for this one, instead of it being like a true just straightforward scene, we're seeing a lot of elements kind of montaged or layered over each other. So we see predominantly the hole in the oak tree, and then we see like a disembodied figure of Nancy's head. We see a large skull figure, and then a sign that says PF with an arrow pointing to it. Sometimes I do tend to like the photo montage kind of composite style covers that Rudy Nappy does. However, for this one, it just feels a little too disembodied for me, because if you were trying to read the scene as literal as it appears, it would look like that Nancy is like knee deep into a tree with a massive skull that is not proportionate to Nancy's head. So for me, unfortunately, you may thought that that would have been my favorite, but I actually think my favorite cover is the first Nappy cover. This one does feel a little bit more true to the story. I feel like it just kind of gives a little bit more of like a visual balance than having all of these items kind of jumbled together in a composite type of style. So I'm actually going to give my favorite to the first Rudy Nappy cover. And I just think between the Russell Tandy cover and the Nappy cover for these two, honestly, I just feel like the colors look a little bit more subdued in the Nappy cover, whereas once again we have that very bright sunny day kind of look with the Tandy cover. So narrowing it down to those two, I think I'm definitely gonna have to give this one to the first Rudy Nappy cover. All right, moving on to book number 13. This one is called The Mystery of the Ivory Charm. So as always, starting with Russell Tandy. This one we have Nancy. She appears to be like in some sort of like shed or a barn outside, and through the open door we kind of have Nancy kind of like peering over her shoulder a little bit, and there is a man walking away, and he appears to have like a dog or an animal with him. We also see that Nancy has kind of like tipped over like a little tea kettle or some sort, and she is pulling like some paper or something out of the kettle. Then moving on to the next cover, another double feature from Rudy Nappy. This one is a scene of Nancy, Bess, and George and what appears to be like an Indian man. He is holding an ivory charm, extending it out to Nancy. And we also see just a little bit of an elephant head in the background. So the first thing that really kind of struck me with this one is we have so much negative space in the sky area. While of course we do need some negative space to really highlight the title of the mystery, something about this just felt very unbalanced to me and very empty. The space above Nancy and the gentleman's head just feels a little bit too empty for me. So I just wasn't really a big fan of this composition. I did kind of like having the elephant in the picture and the man too, but something about it, I just didn't quite enjoy this one. But something about that one just felt like it was missing something, or like the composition crop was a little bit off. So that one, I don't know, you guys, I don't know. Moving on to the next cover, once again, another Rudy Nappy cover. Back to that sort of composite style kind of image. This one, I think, for me, works a lot better than the previous one. And this one, we have a very simple, kind of like a painterly background with like splotches of paint. We see Nancy with an elephant charm around her neck. We also see more of like an up-close detail of the elephant charm. And then we also have an Indian man behind her. So this one, I think, for me, is going to be my favorite. I feel like the montage style just works a little bit better with this cover. It has enough detail in the cover to really kind of pique your interest without kind of looking a little bit too scenic. Sometimes less is more with a lot of Nancy Drew books, and I really feel like this one embodied the mystery the best, so I'm gonna give this one my winning cover. Unfortunately, I just didn't really feel like the title and the Russell Tandy cover, I just felt like they didn't connect at all. I remember the scene that this is from in the book, however, without seeing like the ivory charm, I feel like there's just such a disconnect between the title and the scene that was chosen for this one, so I just feel like that one was not the most successful for the cover. Moving on to number 14, this one is called The Whispering Statue. So starting off, we have Russell Tandy. This one is a garden scene. It seems to be kind of like dusk or early nighttime. The sky is definitely very dark, but there's still enough light that it feels very bright in the scene. So we see a marble statue of a woman kind of in like almost like a Greek style drapery, and she is kind of leaning forward, almost like a whisper kind of motion. And we see Nancy hiding behind the statue, and she has her arm kind of like raised to her mouth, almost like she is whispering as well. We also see a man in the background who kind of seems like he's not aware of Nancy's position, and he seems to have a very shocked kind of expression on his face. We also see a little bit of like garden kind of plants or shrubbery around, and then we also see a large, very luxury looking building in the background. Moving on to the next cover, once again, we have another Rudy Nappy double feature. So for this one, this is almost an identical composition compared to the last one. This one, I feel like there's not as much depth in the colors compared to the last one. We have a lot of deep shadows and bright highlights in the Tandy cover. This one seems a little bit flatter, a little bit less contrast, but once again we have the same statue there. We have Nancy hiding behind it, we have the shrubbery kind of encasing them, and then we have a man in the background who appears, he seems almost more like he is walking away from the statue, but he does still have like his head turned towards the statue area. Once again, we have a large building in the background. And then for the third cover, once again, another Rudy Nappy composite style cover. This one is a very striking cover because it does have a lot of like a white background. We see Nancy's face, and she's kind of like in shadow in a really like bright blue cyan color. I kind of really like the shadow choice for that one. It's just a very striking type of look. There also is a bare tree in the background. That one I just really like. It's such a subtle, simple thing to include, but I feel like it really kind of gives a lot of vibe to this one. And then of course we have the statue, and the position of this one's actually a little bit of a different one compared to the last two, but otherwise this one is a very like striking and very stark kind of cover. This one is a really hard one for me to choose, but I think I'm actually going to give this one to the Tandy cover. I know that's very surprising. I know I don't give a lot to Tandy, but this one, I really enjoyed this one. I liked the scene of it. I feel like the composition of it was really nice and balanced. We have enough space at the top where it is kind of plain so the text can really stand out, but I feel like we definitely have enough of the composition to get an idea of a scene of what's going on, and overall I just really enjoyed this one. So this one's actually going to go to Tandy, But I do have to give my runner up to the nappy composite style one because I just always really liked this cover. And moving on to the final book cover we're going to be covering in this one, we are at number 15, and this one is called The Haunted Bridge. So starting off with this one with Russell Tandy's cover, we have Nancy in a very bright blazer. She has a very like smart business attire kind of outfit on. In the background, we see a bridge and we see kind of like a ghostly figure in the background. Once again, we do have like a very bright kind of like sunny day kind of look. It looks like it's maybe starting to become dusk though, with like a sun kind of setting in the background, but there's still plenty of daylight in this one. Nancy's kind of looking over her shoulder and she's kind of like rustling through the brush, it appears. Moving on to the next one, Rudy Nappy. Once again, this one is a very clear, obvious like redesign of the original cover, like almost an exact dupe. Once again, we have the bridge in the background. We have the spectral ghost with his arm stretched out. Nancy's in the same position, even in the same outfit almost. So this one is definitely a very similar one. I feel like this one has a little bit more of a moody vibe to it with the color choices. Almost looks like a little bit of like a deeper dusk. And then finally, moving on to the last cover. Once again, this is another nappy cover, and this one is the composite type style. Once again, we have that really stark white background with just a little bit of like a soft greenish gold kind of painterly background. We see the actual bridge as if Nancy has just crossed it with a spectral ghost kind of chasing after her. And Nancy is of course peering over her shoulder, almost like it reminds me of like in a kid's cartoon, like a Scooby-Doo, where they cross an old bridge that is just breaking right behind them and they get over it just in the nick of time. This one I feel like just has a lot of energy to it, and I really love the kind of spookiness of the ghost like coming after her. So for me, for this one, it's got to be hands down the last nappy cover. I feel like even with this one having such limited details, we really just have the bridge, the ghost, and Nancy. I feel like it just conveys so much more terror and scary spookiness than the other two covers, and that one has to absolutely be my clear winner for my favorite cover. Alright guys, so that is it for all of my thoughts on all of the Nancy Drew book covers from 11 to 15. Definitely let me know which of the covers for each of the books were your favorites and why did you like them, what did you not like about them, and definitely let me know which ones were your favorite winners. I always love talking about the book covers, and this has been a really fun kind of like video series to do, so I am definitely going to be continuing this one, and we're probably just going to make this part of like a regular series on my channel. So that is going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please like and subscribe. You can follow me on social media, links are below, and until my next video, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.